Welcome to the panel on Turkey's role in the post-American Middle East. My name is Ioannis Grigoriadis. I'm an associate professor, Jean Monnet Chair of European Studies at Bilkent University in Ankara. And I'm also senior fellow and the head of the Turkey program at the Hellenic Foundation for European and Foreign Policy, ELIAMEP. Today, I'm very glad to chair a panel on an important topic that, of course, affects regional politics and Greece's position, of course, in the Eastern Mediterranean and in the Balkans. I have on my right Dr. Gönül, who is working at the Middle East Institute in Washington. I have Professor Evren Balta from Ozyegin University in Istanbul. I have Professor Angelos Syrigos, who is a professor from Panteion University, a member of the Greek Parliament and a former minister. And Professor Marilena Koppa, who is also...
I'm not a foreign minister.
A former. Former
okay.
minister. Yes, no.
Once a minister?
To be honest, that is true, yes.
Yes, no.
Turkey as well.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
And Professor Marilena Koppa, who is working at Panteion University. I'll first give the floor to Gönül, who works in the United States. So there is a big discussion about US-Turkey relations over the last years. The relationship has been transformed. I've been, as a student of Turkish politics, I've witnessed the rise of anti-Americanism in Turkey, when actually, incidentally, anti-Americanism in Greece was declining. And of course, this may reflect both social dynamics, but also diplomatic and political dynamics. The United States is declining in interest in the region, although recent developments may point to the opposite. What is the state of affairs? How do you look into the Middle East from Washington as the head of the Turkey program at the Middle East Institute?
Well, thank you, Ioannis. I'm very pleased to be here. And it's indeed important to unpack what you just said, that there's this, and the title of the panel suggests that there is indeed a post-American Middle East. And I think it's important to tackle that and a few other points. So the first question is do we actually, is the post-American Middle East here already? And the second question is, what does it look like? And the third one is, what would Turkey's role be in that post-American Middle East? So regarding the first question, the short answer is yes, there is a post-American Middle East, not because the United States has substantially decreased its physical capabilities in the region. There's been a modest, troop presence in the region, but still Americans are very much engaged. They do have these bases. They engage in a security framework with regional partners. So the physical capability and engagement of the United States in the region is still there. But the perception, there is a perception that Americans are retreating. And people and countries, they act on perception. So what their perceptions are really matter. And the reasons, I think, several drivers that really fed that perception was Obama's favorite pivot to Asia. And then came the Trump administration and President Trump's approach to allies that really see them not as an asset, but as a liability. And the third is Biden administration's haphazard withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the Russian invasion of Ukraine made many in the region think that Americans are not a reliable ally. So that really fed the perception that they're not going to be there. But I think it's not really unique to the Middle East. If you look at Europe, there's the discussion on Europe that the Europeans should have strategic autonomy is very prominent, and also in the Asia Pacific, you see the same efforts to pursue an independent course. So it's not just unique to the Middle East, but obviously the world is bracing for President Trump now, and we are talking more about how Americans are withdrawing from the region. So, and the second point that you made is very important. A lot of people basically argue that counter what I'm saying about American withdrawal from the region, saying that, you know, but what about Gaza? Now Americans have been pulled back into the region. And I disagree with that, because I think the Middle East that will emerge post-Gaza is going to look like very much like a pre-Gaza war in the Middle East. If anything, the current Gaza war has shown that Americans have limited leverage over its most important partners, Israel and Saudi Arabia. The Americans could not stop Israelis killing 30,000 people in Gaza. And the Saudis also managed to pursue a more independent foreign policy that all suggests that there is really a post-American Middle East that has been in the making for some time. It's not anything new. And now the second question is, what does that mean? What does it actually look like? Many people in Washington fear that if Americans withdraw from the region, there will be instability. Russia and China will step in, so therefore Americans cannot afford to completely withdraw from the region. And I disagree with that as well. I think the first point is, in the quarter century, US has been involved in the region. Its presence has not really produced stability. The invasion of Iraq, war in Afghanistan, and the so-called humanitarian intervention in Libya really produced a lot of instability in the region. And also the point that Americans were there, one of the reasons was their dependence on oil. Now Americans are less dependent on Middle Eastern oil. So that all really strengthens the voice of those who have been pushing for an American withdrawal. And I think it's already there. And the third and last question, and I know Evren is going to tackle that in more detail, but I would like to say a few things. So in that regional order where Americans are not that much interested in daily affairs of its allies, some call it offshore balancing, which means when regional leaders don't really are not interested in resolving regional conflicts, Americans are going to step in. And that's what's happening, right? In the Houthi, for example, the reason why Americans, they sent a navy there, and in the Red Sea, Americans are playing a prominent role, mainly because others in the region, they do not want to play that role. So there is not this permanent, the Iraqi invasion way of American presence, but America steps in when others won't. So that is a different kind of engagement, and that has become very much popular since President Obama. So there is this isolationist view that is shared by both Republicans and Democrats. So I think it's here to stay, and this has led to a regionalization where regional countries, like children, right? If you have children, if they know that you're always going to be there to fix their problems, they will never behave. So right now, because of that perception that Americans are withdrawing, the regional countries have came forward and they have formulated this regionalist policy where they try to fix their own problems. And that's what we have been seeing with Saudi rapprochement with Iran, Qatar Gulf resolution of the crisis, Turkey reaching out to Israel and other regional countries. So that is, in fact, not a tragedy. A post-American Middle East is not a tragedy, and it is indeed a very good thing. And what role can Turkey play there? Turkey has huge ambitions. It certainly wants to lead the region, be a regional hegemon, but I doubt it has the capacity to play that role. So that ambition has been curtailed by three factors. One is Turkey has a baggage, the roots of which go back to the Arab uprisings. The regional countries see Turkey's leadership as a very problematic thing, because we're still talking about a very autocratic region. And the second factor that really curtails Turkey's ambition is its domestic capabilities. Economically, Turkey is going through a very tough time. And the last time when I talked to Gulf countries, they said that Erdogan is where we want him to be. He is very vulnerable. He is economically weakening. And the third reason why Turkey cannot play the role it once played in the region is that what made Turkey unique and appealing to regional countries and the peoples of the region was Turkey's special relationship, strong bonds with the Western world, and that's not there anymore. Americans, and going back, and I'll end it there, going back to your point about diminishing strategic ties between Turkey and the United States, I agree with that transactionalism has become the main defining feature of Turkey's relationship with the West. It's not something that Turkey prefers, but it's also something that the Western countries has been pursuing because they see Turkey as a very problematic country, and I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Gönül. I'll now pass the floor to Evren. We were collaborating in a joint opinion survey series. Greek and Turkish public opinion were asked the same questions in 5 rounds. And I remember one of the answers that struck me most was that more than 80% of Turkish citizens said that they support Turkish strategic autonomy. Turkey should have a fully independent foreign policy.
Yeah, yeah.
So how does this reflect into our discussion here? How does this mean Turkey is going to fare in Middle East and all these disputes?
Okay, maybe I can start from there, but then I'm going to be following Gönül's footsteps and be asking 3 questions in order to see the Turkey's role in the changing Middle East or post-American Middle East. And the fact that I was listening to Greek-Turkish relations panel this morning, and the fact that, or the discourse that the panelists here was really very different from what Gönül just experienced, Turkey weakening, domestic capacity, economic capacity, diminishing in this and that. But when we asked the Turkish respondents, and that was very different from the Greek public opinion, the finding we have was that despite the polarization, because in every single issue we had polarization in Turkish foreign policy when it comes to public opinion, whether Turkey should align with the Americans, democracy, rule of law, everything. I mean, you have a very polarized public opinion. But when it comes to whether Turkey should be a regional hegemon, whether Turkey should pursue strategic autonomy, that polarization disappears. And 80%, 90% of the Turkish public thinks that Turkey is a regional power, already is, and what Erdogan has done is a good thing, and also Turkey should pursue strategic autonomy. And it shows that this discourse of the government, Erdogan's government, has been basically bought by the public, and it's very difficult to change that discourse, right? So you have this capacity problem, which is a reality, but you also have this public perception, political perception that Turkey, both from the Greek side and Turkish side, that the Turkey is a very powerful actor that has to be acting on its own strategically, autonomously. But going back to what Gönül said, in terms of Turkey's foreign policy in the Middle East, I also had 3 questions to unpack the Turkey's role in the Middle East. And the first question was, what were and I agree with you what you said, the turning point was 2011, Arab Spring, a new pattern has emerged in Turkish foreign policy with regard to its presence in the Middle East. And the second question is, after identifying the patterns, I think was this unique to Erdogan? I mean, if it was someone else, not Erdogan, opposition, would it be the same pattern of foreign policy that we were witnessing in that period? And the third question, after 2021, let me say, it's another turning point. Is there a new pattern emerging? I don't have much time, so I'm going to be very briefly, because some of things Gönül already touched upon. Very briefly, try to answer these three questions. I think in terms of the patterns of Turkish foreign policy in the Middle East, what we have seen after 2011, after the Arab Spring, is prioritization of national security. This is not new, of course. Turkey has always prioritized national security, but this is now happening in the middle of the collapse, or in the framework of the collapse of the 2 states, Syria and Iraq. So the way that Turkey basically dealt with the Kurdish issue became very important, and the way the instruments that Turkey is using has changed. For a more ethno-political instruments, Turkey became a more geopolitical actor in terms of, or began to use more geopolitical instruments in order to tackle the Kurdish question. And that was also related to the US collaboration with the PYD, and that really created a lot of anxiety within Turkey. And that takes us to the second part, which is related pattern, which is related to this prioritization of security, but something more than that. Gönül also talked about it a little bit. Turkey became more assertive and became more, I mean, its discourse has shifted towards regional hegemony, which the Turkish public opinion now believes that Turkey is a regional hegemon. I mean, there is this parallel process going on there. And you have Turkey basically being present militarily in many of the regional conflicts in the Middle East. This has never been the case in the past, except maybe Iraq. So you have military assertiveness as a major instrument of Turkey in this period. And finally, you have flexible alliances. Some say it's strategic autonomy or pragmatic alliances, you could say, but you can also say flexible alliances. But that's the thing is that the thinking, the Turkey's foreign policy thinking shifted towards this from multilateral ties to providing solutions to immediate threats or opportunities. So it's basically responding to the threats and grabbing opportunities kind of thinking with whoever is available, whichever actor is available. So it was very pragmatic in that sense and a very short-termist. And the short-termism began to really dominate the Turkey's foreign policy thinking. Is it unique to Erdogan? This is going to be much shorter, I promise. Is it unique to Erdogan? Some of it not. The response to the Kurdish question probably would have been pretty much the same, given that it's a huge, like it's really an establishment issue. But the way that it reacted is different. And what is basically very different is that the leadership style is different, which really made it possible. It couldn't have been this possible. The instruments that the AKP used wouldn't be available without that leadership. There is also this prioritization of certain issues because of cultural, ideological ties to the Middle East. And there is also this Muslim connection, even for Turkey's migration policy, Kurdish policy, everything got really influenced with the Turkey's Muslim connection. And that was always there. With regard to its transnational ties as well, I mean, its Egypt policy, Israel policy got shaped really with this Muslim connection as well. And the emphasis on Muslim solidarity was really shaping its foreign policy. Finally, what has changed? A little bit of back to beginning of 2000s, Turkey now has to prioritize the economy. This is something Gönül said. It's the economic imperative increasingly dominating Turkey's foreign policy, diversifying economic partnerships, new alliances, going back to the EU for money, to the Western alliance, and this and that. So that is something very important that shapes everything. Regional dynamics are changing, and Turkey is responding to that. Lots of normalization efforts, and in Egypt, with Israel, that also includes Greece as well. So Turkey is in that, has already been in this normalization process. Reopening embassies, official visits, state relations, and this and that. These are all happening in the context of Ukrainian war. But let me finish with this. With the Gaza war, and I'm going to just use this as an example, the economic imperative is still there, and Turkey continued to trade with Israel up until the end of 2024 elections, and then cut major linkages or the trade, so the limited, let me say, limited trade partnership with Israel. And that was coming from domestic response. So there was a lot of domestic pressure. And one of the reasons why AKP lost a lot of votes to New Welfare Party, another conservative right party, was related to, not partially, not only, but partially related to this pressure coming to AKP to cut or limit cut completely trade links with Israel. So there's this, Turkey has to open up economically, but there's also this domestic pressure coming up, and everything is going to be shaped, and this is something Gönül said, I mean, by balancing both the domestic and external imperatives at the same time. And I'm not sure that whether it's an easy task. It's a very difficult task. And I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Evren. I'll now move to Angelos. How has this transformation of the region shaped Greek foreign policy? Greece used to be largely absent from the Middle East for many, many years. And recently there's a new interest. There are new contacts with Egypt, with the UAE, there is a new engagement in the region. How is this change we've discussed shaped Greek positions on the Middle East?
In the past, I was asking my students which country is closest to Greece, Libya or France? They were puzzled, and they were telling me, France. In reality, the island of Crete is much closer to Libya than the city of Thessaloniki. Actually, the city of Thessaloniki is double the distance from the distance between the island of Crete and Libya. What happened following 2019 and the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between Turkey and Libya was that Greece realized that there is another world over there. And we were absent all these years. So we rediscovered this world. The reality was that the first discovery of this world was after the Mavi Vatan incident in 2010. It was by that time that...
Marmara. Mavi Marmara.
Mavi Vatan, I said, sorry. Mavi Marmara.
We can understand.
Okay, Mavi Marmara. Mavi Vatan is the blue homeland, is the doctrine of Turkey.
Very uncomfortable mix to put together.
Yes, the problem was the word Mavi, which means blue. Anyway, we initially discovered the area after the Mavi Marmara incident. It was by that time that Israel decided to approach Greece because they started cutting ties, strategic ties, with Turkey. So we first discovered this area after this incident. And then we started making, started having close contact with both Egypt, Israel, and of course, the medium was Cyprus. This lasted all these years between 2010 up to 2019. And I can say that in this case, Greece had something which was not very usual. We had a strategy upon which all parties agreed. Because during these 10 years, all parties, from the right to the left, all parties participated in the government. So Greece returned, within brackets, to the area after 2019. They started forming alliances with the countries of the area. And up to a certain point, we were alone because Turkey's foreign policy shifted after the 2011 Arab uprisings from soft power to hard power. It is obvious that it has been already been said that Turkey wants to be a regional hegemon, and for many, many years, Greece was alone in the area. This lasted up to 2021. After so many years of strained relations, Turkey tried, before the Hamas attack to Israel, to rebuild its own relationships in the Middle East. Nevertheless, I believe that now everything depends on the war in the Gaza Strip. And when I saw the title of this panel, Turkey's role in the post-American Middle East, I thought that what do we mean by saying post-American Middle East? Because in the past, everybody believed that America wants to leave the area. But when the Hamas attack took place, America was the only state that had a serious presence in the area. The American foreign minister visited the area several times. There are 2 American air carriers in the area, and it is obvious that the only state that follows very, very closely what is happening in the area is the United States. So the post-American Middle East, I'm not sure that it was the same post-American Middle East as before the Hamas attack.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I'll now pass the floor to Marilena. We've discussed already about strategic autonomy. Turkey's quest for strategic autonomy appears to be extremely popular across the political spectrum in Turkey. But of course, this has greater implications for security in Europe, in the world. So how can you comment on this? How different is the world going to be with a Turkey that's more interested in its own national interest and being less interested in joining international organizations and promote an agenda which is considered to be the agenda of the international community?
Thank you. Of course, after the withdrawal of the American, I disagree in a way with my friend and colleague Angelos. I think it was a withdrawal with mixed results, some successes, but not much. And this opened up the way for new dynamics in the region, one of which was the renewed ambition of Turkey. And this created the whole discussion about strategic autonomy and the autonomous foreign policy. But whereas in the case of Ukraine, we saw Turkey becoming a true mediator in the conflict, in the case of the Gaza war, it was totally different. It's a different pattern. Because in terms of the Palestinian issue, which was always a very close to Erdogan's heart issue, the Turkish policy had mixed result. For example, we all know that Hamas wasn't Erdogan's interlocutor. Hamas leaders have visited on many occasions Istanbul. But this stance had as a result to lead Turkey being excluded from hostages negotiation at a time when Gulf and Egypt have made it clear that they do not want to enter in an anti-Israeli front, led by Turkey especially. So a possible future role by Turkey in this conflict is not realistic because, first of all, Israel will not accept such a role for Turkey. However, if we see the broader picture, for example, the future of Syria and Iraq, situation in Gaza, Black Sea, there are always issues where the US and the EU are obliged to discuss with Turkey, because Turkey is not only geographical, but also politically very relevant. And for example, the presence of Erdogan in the 44th Gulf Cooperation Council shows the road ahead. And we see important changes in Turkey's relations with the Arab Gulf states, bearing in mind that some time ago, Turkey was engaged in a fierce conflict with Riyadh and Abu Dhabi. Let's not forget the crisis with Saudi Arabia after the assassination of Khashoggi in 2018 in Istanbul. But what has happened now in March 2023, Turkish authorities transferred the prosecution of the Khashoggi case to Riyadh authorities, which we all understand what that means. And at the same time, the Saudi Fund of Development sent $5 billion in Turkey's central bank. So climate has definitely changed. Turkey has focused on regional diplomacy, tried to internationalize the Gaza conflict. And what is interesting is that Ankara supports the Arab agency concerning the Gaza war. And in fact, instead of undermining the process of normalization between Turkey and Arab Gulf states, the war appears to have underpinned it. Now, in what concerns the EU, I believe the more the EU turns its back to Turkey, the more Turkey insists on its strategic autonomy and understanding what is a fact, the growing isolation of the West from the rest, as we used to say. Turkey tries to present itself as the bridge between the West and the rest, being part of both. And one could say that it's a direct relationship between the EU non-future for Turkey and its renewed ambition. And events in the region have accentuated all that. The new Turkey we are faced with has multiple identities. It's a Middle Eastern country, a Black Sea power, a European country, bordering in Iran, and a Eurasian power belonging to NATO. And I feel that Turkey uses these multiple identities to be relevant in different fora and in different occasions. So to conclude, I think Turkey managed to position itself as a hybrid power between the West and the rest. And after decades of westward orientation, Turkey feels that it's free to engage with other countries without regard to Western objectives or priorities, meaning that Turkey feels free to both engage with the West and with its adversaries. So for how long this very, weak balance can keep, I think this is something that we all have to follow. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We have time for a second round of questions, so I'll take the opportunity to ask one question to each of you, and I hope you can answer within 4 minutes, so we're in time. Gönül, one of the main tools for Turkish foreign policy in the Middle East in the last decade has been this Muslim Brotherhood, the Islamic movement. This has been something that caused lots of tensions between Turkey and leading countries in the region, and also, of course, led to lots of tensions within US-Turkey relations. How can we evaluate the developments on this front? Is Erdogan going to build these relationships with the Saudis and the UAE, or is he going to appeal again to the Muslim street that has been very favorable to him for many years?
Well, I think the Muslim Brotherhood is not the formidable force that people thought that it was following the Arab uprisings, right? Even in Tunisia, it failed. They failed miserably in Egypt. So I think right now, one of the reasons why we have been seeing these normalization efforts between Turkey and the Gulf countries is that because they do not see Erdogan's anti-status quo, pro-Muslim Brotherhood policy as an existential threat. Because Muslim Brotherhood is not viewed as an existential threat anymore. And rightly so. Of course, this doesn't mean that political Islam is dead. Social movements, it takes generations and a lot more than a few military coups to die down. So I think on the street, on the Arab street, they still appeal to marginalized segments of different societies. But as a political force, I think it's going to take many, many years to rebuild their image. So that's why I think Muslim Brotherhood is not a useful tool for Erdogan. The way he thought it was before, I think initially it was a miscalculation on Erdogan's part that Muslim Brotherhood was never going to be a useful tool, but there was a time when he thought it would be. So that expectation is dead now. So that's why I think we're seeing these rapprochements between Turkey and the region. And I want to tie that to something Angelos said. He said, the post-American Middle East before Gaza war is different than the post-American Middle East after Gaza war. And I want to say this. So before, I think it was mid-2022, Biden administration decided to re-engage in the Middle East, and that was a conscious effort. The goal there was 3 main goals. One, to curb Chinese influence. They thought that China was gaining ground in the region, and they really wanted to cultivate its relationship with particularly the Gulf countries to block China's efforts. So that was number one goal. And the number two goal was to curb Iranian influence through pursuing normalization efforts between Israel and the Gulf countries. So they thought, the administration thought, if we can make sure, if we put these countries, Israel and Arab countries' relationship on track, we can both block the rise of China in the region, we can curb Iranian influence, and we will have more leverage over Saudi so they can increase oil production. So that was the calculation before the Gaza war. Now, where are we after the Gaza war? Well, everyone realized that China is in fact not a formidable force that many in the region and in Washington saw, right? I'm not talking about globally, I'm talking about Chinese influence in the region. Americans pressed really hard for the Chinese to intervene in the Red Sea. China refused. So what does that mean? That means for the Middle East, China remains only an economic partner. It cannot be a security partner. So that's why everyone should calm down. China is not taking over the Middle East. And the second thing is curbing Iran, right? So that was the calculation. Now, after post-Gaza, what do we know about Iran? That Iran is not suicidal. Iran could have retaliated against Israel after the Gaza war, but it pursued a very measured response. Because Iran also is not, yes, it does have this huge network of militias, that's a great threat, but on the other hand, it's a power declining. And the third, Americans hope to have leverage over the Saudis, right? That was the plan with the Abraham Accords. Now they realize MBS will do whatever he wants, and he doesn't, Americans cannot push him or change his behavior. When Biden shook the famous fist bump, remember? That was a very costly move for Biden, and it didn't pay off. MBS didn't care. So that's why I'm saying that this whole concept of Americans are back, they're going to be back after the Gaza war, I just simply don't agree with that. Because, again, if anything, Americans now realize that they have much less leverage over a country like Israel. It's the number one security, it's the country that receives the most American security aid. And Netanyahu doesn't care about Biden, whatever he says. So Washington doesn't have an influence. And the second thing is strategic autonomy, Turkey pursuing strategic autonomy in the region. Turkey tried that, remember, after uprisings, and it failed. Right after the Arab uprisings, Turkey sought this strategic autonomy, gave the middle finger to the Western countries, armed jihadis, and what happened? So several years after that, he had to make a U-turn on every single thing. He's now not really investing in the very little Muslim Brotherhood presence in the region. He's making peace with everyone. And the one tool that Turkey, one of many tools that Turkey hopes to build on to increase its influence in the region is, for example, this Iraqi development project, right? So that Turkey is very excited about that, thinking that Erdogan can boost his popularity again, the way it was after the Arab uprisings. But who's going to finance that? Turkey is not going to be able to do that with its struggling economy. So the point I'm trying to make here is that I know we love this word in Turkey, that's strategic autonomy. A country like Turkey is not Brazil, it's not Saudi Arabia, it's not India, like other emerging middle powers. Turkey is a lot more engaged in Western security structure. It's struggling economically, and it's living in a very dangerous neighborhood where Turkey cannot actually pursue a strategically autonomous foreign policy from NATO and the West.
Thank you very much, Gönül. Evren, we have some recent election results in Turkey that has raised new interest in the Turkish opposition. So how different is Turkey's opposition view on Turkish policy in the Middle East? Can we say that they have a different vision on Syria, Libya, the Gulf, and all these issues? You can give us a quick answer.
This was something that was asked to all of us before the general elections.
Yes.
And after the general elections, we all forgot the question. And even before the general elections, we were basically responding to that question as the scholars working on Turkish foreign policy. There is a lot of silence coming from the Turkish opposition in terms of foreign policy vis-a-vis the Middle East. I mean, we do know that Turkish opposition's foreign policy is basically more about multilateralism, criticizing Erdogan's assertiveness in the Middle East as well. But there were no specific policy propositions in terms of, how Turkey should act in Syria or in Iraq or in Libya, Yemen, in the Middle East in general. Normalization efforts that the government was already launched even before the general elections of 2023 was basically an agenda of the Turkish opposition as well. But majority of the policy program or the foreign policy program of the opposition was already, in the agenda of the government by this normalization effort. I mean, that's happening since 2021. So it was the agenda in general is basically going back to the EU agenda, going back to the multilateralism, rule of law, democracy, a bit more harsher in terms of migration and return of the refugees, which required safe zones and this and that. So they underlined it a lot before the election. But I cannot say, that there was a specific policy agenda by the opposition that was put forward before 2023 for the Middle East. Yeah. But there was, yes, a lot of emphasis on multilateralism and EU and Turkey's Western partners and transatlantic alliance in general, I would say.
Thank you very much. Angela, how has Greek-American relationship been affected by these developments? Can we argue that America's departure from the Middle East provides an opportunity for Greek foreign policy and the development of Greek-American security relations?
That's a big question. First of all, I don't believe that the United States want to leave the area just right now. On the contrary, they are afraid that we are a step before having a regional war. That's why they are in the area. That's for a short term. But in reality, short-term messages are coming every second year. So it is very difficult to form a policy, a long-term policy, when you have all these incidents taking place every 1 or 2 years. Now, at present, Greece and Cyprus, we can say that they are the last barriers of the zone of peace, whereas all the other countries in the East are falling into the zone of war. So the main idea for Greece is to present to the Americans that we are the last frontier of peace and stability. For example, the fact that Cyprus has been used by the Americans for all their citizens who wanted to evacuate Israel to move through Cyprus. The fact that Cyprus now works as one of the places which are used for the Gaza Strip to send supplies. These are issues that are coming to the surface, but I strongly believe that this is one part of the picture. The other part of the picture is that Turkey is an important ally for the West, and the West does not, at least the United States, they do not want to lose Turkey. So they are going to accept Erdogan's strange decisions, but they want Turkey to remain to the West, to remain within us.
Thank you very much. And the last question for Marilena. Where does the European Union stand into all this conundrum? Of course, we talk about US presence in the Middle East, but the EU is paying a price for the instability in the region.
Absolutely. And this, I think, has a lot to do with what I was thinking of replying to what was said, that Turkey will never leave the Western institutions. Of course, because Turkey is exactly balancing, proving that it's member of both, so it can be an honest interlocutor of both, and it can be an honest broker in this case. In the majority of the member states, the idea of EU becoming a full member is out of the table. But in fact, this is what the message sent by Erdogan, not the official message, which is we still want to become a full-fledged member, but all the other messages coming to Brussels is that Turkey is not interested in that. What Turkey is investing is a customs union plus. It absolutely wants to have close ties with Brussels, but the idea, but maybe being a part of the EU is a very straitjacket for Erdogan, meaning that it has to pass all the acquis communautaire preconditions and all that. Erdogan has no intentions of entering in this debate. It wants to have a transactional agreement with the EU, which can truly be beneficial, and which agreement and relationship he can sell to his allies in the Middle East.
Thank you very much, and this brings us to the end of our panel. Thank you very much to the participants, to the panelists, and thank you very much to you for your attention.